Hey, I got a question for you. What do you think this is? This bag right here. Now, maybe you can't read it. It's on whatever device you're looking at this. It says sand on it. And let me show you a closer look so you can get a better view of it.
Okay, here it is. I think you can pretty well see and read what this says this is. And it's not hard to figure out. So there it is.
So if you said this is a bag of sand from someplace like Home Depot or Lowe's or something like that, you're wrong. This is the world's cheapest pay dirt. Yeah, it's also a bag of sand from Home Depot. But the question is, can you really make money gold mining Home Depot sand? I don't know. We're going to take a look at it today. I'm Chris Ralph, the professional prospector, and we're going to look into Home Depot type sand, whether it comes from Lowe's or wherever. Now, not all sand like this has gold in it. Some does, some doesn't. It's just a matter of where it comes from. You know, a lot of places that make sand, you know, there's a lot of gravel pits along the western front of the Sierra Nevada where the streams that dump the gravel in, the dirt and the sand and all that, are gold bearing. And a lot of these plants actually produce huge amounts of gold. They have recovery systems that process the sand and they get the gold out of it, but they don't quite get all of it. It's not a super efficient kind of system. And so you buy a bag of sand like this, and because the recovery isn't super efficient, there actually is still a little bit of gold left in it. In fact, many of these plants aren't all that far from the bucket line dredge fields that produce millions of ounces of gold not by suction dredging like, you know, individuals do, but by the big bucket line dredges that just scooped up bucket after bucket and made giant piles of dirt and gravel. You know, that stuff, they mine that stuff for gold at the mouth of the river where the river's dumped into the Central Valley. And there's other places, some in Nevada, some of course in Oregon and Washington and Montana and elsewhere that produce gold. There's gravel plants that have a bit of gold. And the same thing, they get most of the gold out with their recovery systems, but they leave a little bit behind. And the question is, with the little bit behind, can you actually make money mining that gold? Now, I have a scale that weighs to thousandths of a gram, and we're going to take a look at that and we'll weigh out the gold we find very exactly and do some calculations and see if it isn't possible to actually break even or maybe make a little money doing mining of regular sand. Now, I've also taken a couple of samples from old hydraulic pits, been up there metal detecting for nuggets, and I decided just to take some samples for comparison's sake to see what samples from the bottom of old hydraulic pits where the old-time miners in the 1800s washed away hillsides and, you know, they left a little bit of gold behind. I've been doing some metal detecting in some of these places, and we're going to see by comparison how much better that gold is, and I expect it to be better, how much better that gold is than the Home Depot sand. So come along with me. The next step, because I have the sand in hand, the next step is to take it out. I'm going to run it very carefully through my sluice box, make a concentrate, and then we'll take it home, pan through it, and get the gold, weigh it up, and we'll see where we land, what the numbers are, what the dollars are, and how it works. So stay tuned for this video. We're going to get all that done right now.
So here I am going ahead and sluicing the material, and I found a stream here close by that was fairly shallow, but the water was moving at about the right speed and having the right angle. I moistened the material in the bucket. This is the sand material, and I went through, of course, the sand material from the bag that I got at Lowe's, and then I also went through all the material that I collected at the hydraulic pits, both of them, the two different places, and then I did that to compare them. I just want to show you how I ran the sluice carefully and added a little bit at a time, kind of let it flow on through, and that's kind of the right speed. Running a sluice box is when you can run it and then it just goes through at a quick speed. And of course, here I am. I've run the material. I'm not going to do this whole thing in real time simply because it would be just way too boring to do it in real time, especially since I was doing 3 different samples. But this is my work with the sand from Home Depot. For a second there, you saw me looking at the mat on the front, because I have one of those indicator mats on the front, and I put the wing nut in my pocket so I don't lose it. But I looked at the indicator mat, and with the construction sand, I did not see any gold. However, with both of the samples that came out of the pits, out of the hydraulic pits, different pits, of course, but 2 different samples, both of those I did see gold on the indicator mat. One of them even better than the other, but both of them were pretty good. So I was able to see that there was definitely gold from the hydraulic pits. I'm sure there'll be at least I'm hoping there'll be at least some gold from the construction sand, but we'll find out when we get it panned out. So I cleaned out the sluice box, and then here I am going through the miner's moss mat that I have underneath my riffles. The miner's moss does a great job of collecting the gold. I know that different people have their favorites of the different kind of mats, but none of the mats are magical. They can't produce gold that isn't there, and it's not like one gets 100% and all the rest of the mats that are the competitors only get 5% of the gold. The people that really fight the most about the mats are the people that sell them, and small wonder why. But my experience with using different kind of mats is that used properly, they all work pretty good. The differences between them are fairly small. It's not like you're getting a huge amount. Okay, so I've finished with the sand. That was the last of the sand, the construction sand, and I'm done with that. Okay, I'm back at the house, and I've got my 3 buckets of concentrates here. Actually, the Home Depot sand, the concentrates are here in my pan, the little finish pan, and I'm going to carefully pan through all 3 of these and concentrate out the gold and get it to where it's just clean gold, and then I'm going to weigh it up on my scale. Like I say, I have a very accurate scale that goes to 1/1000th of a gram, and 1/1000th of a gram is not very much, but it'll weigh down to that accurate. And if it's too small to show up on 1/1000th of a gram, yeah, then it's really not anywhere near close to being able to be economic to mine Home Depot sand. But I'll tell you, when I did the sluice box, like I say, I saw indications of gold for both of the samples that I took out of the hydraulic pits, but I didn't see anything for the Home Depot sand. Now, while I'm panning this, I pour it out in the pan, I can see that there's lots of black sand, and black sand can be a good indicator, but it's no guarantee. There's places with gobs of black sand and no gold. There's also a few places that have virtually no black sand and decent gold. So they're not a guarantee, but a lot of times in places, if you have concentrations of black sand, you can have good amounts of gold with it. And so I'm not going to make you watch me do all of this, but I'm going to show you that I'm being very careful with the material. I'm shaking the pan real good to make sure the gold all settles down to the bottom. And then, once I get everything shook down real good, then I will wash off the lighter material on the surface, just like that. And then I'll shake it down again real good and wash off the material on the surface, just like that. And I'll keep going through this process till I work it down to where it's just black sand and gold in the final concentrate in the pan. And then I will use magnets. I've got a real light duty magnet here, and then I've got a much stronger magnet, a rare earth magnet here.
And I like to use 2 magnets. We'll talk a little bit more about that when I get down to the black sand. I'll talk about why I use 2 different magnets of very different strength as far as magnetic strength. I think it helps to make sure that you don't, when you suck up the black sand, that you don't also suck up gold with it. And I'll explain that in a minute. But for now, I'm going to be going through this sample, shaking it good, wash off the lighter material, shake it real good, wash off the lighter material. I only do a few washes before, I wash it off a couple times before I shake it back down. You don't want to shake it down once and then, wash off for 10 times, because the shaking down process, it's not perfectly efficient. You can wash off gold if you don't shake it down every few washes of the lighter material. So I'm going to keep doing this, and I will bring you back in just a minute when I'm down to the black sand. I'll show you that in the pan. Okay, I've panned that down to, as you can see, a big glob of black sand. And actually, as I was panning through there, I did see one little tiny flake and maybe a speck or 2 of others. I don't think that's going to be enough to weigh on even 1/1000th of a gram scale. But what I'm going to go through now is to go through this with, I'll spread the black sand around in the pan, and then I'll start with my weak magnet first, because I don't want to just suck up a bunch of black sand and suck up the gold with it, because you may have black sand and a little flake of gold, and then when you hit it with the magnet, everything gets sucked up onto the magnet. So that's the danger of using a magnet to separate out black sand. So I start with a real weak one and get everything out that I can with the real weak one, and be really careful to keep the black sand spread out in the pan, so you really don't want to start with something like this, which is a big thick glob of black sand, and then just stick a magnet, because whatever gold's in there will get sucked up with the black sand. So spread it out evenly, as thin as you can, then gently go at it with a weak magnet first to suck up the more strongly magnetic pieces. And then once you get the more strongly magnetic stuff out, then you can go with the stronger magnet to get the more weakly magnetic black sand. Because not all black sand has the same magnetic propensity or strength to be, attracted to a magnet. Some is strongly attracted to a magnet, some is medium attracted to a magnet, and some is very weakly attracted to a magnet. And that's why you go with a weak magnet to take out the stuff that's strongly magnetic, and a strong magnet to take out the stuff that's weakly magnetic. That way it gets you the maximum clean material to go with, because you want to clean away all the black sand, and it's work and difficult to do that. So using a couple of different magnets is a smart way to go. So I'm going to get to it and start working on this and start sucking out that black sand. So with some water, I will carefully shake this down and spread the black sand out, get some good water on top of it, and then kind of start at the edges and see what I can suck out. And it's working to suck out the more strongly magnetic stuff. You see, I'm getting the more magnetic stuff on this weak magnet, and I will just slowly go through that and separate all the black sand, and then once it's on the magnet, then I can just get rid of it in the water. The other thing is, you want the magnet to actually pull up the sand. You don't want to just stick it down in there, and you want to kind of shake the magnet too, so that any non-magnetic stuff that gets sucked up with the black sand is going to, when you shake it, it'll have a chance to fall off. And that's how I separate out the black sand. I've got a couple of videos on separating gold from black sand, and I'll put a link to one and then the other right here above me. And if you're interested in that further, you can check out the link. But now I'm going to do this, and then we'll take a look at the gold that results. I'll show you some pictures, and we'll see what the weights are, and we'll do some calculations.
So after sluicing and panning through 60 pounds of construction sand from Home Depot, this is the gold I was left with. You can see on the right one very small flake, and then there's 4 little pieces there. It's hard to see, but 2 of the pieces are touching. There's actually 4 little tiny micro dots plus the little flake. Not much gold for 60 pounds of sand. But then, as I said, you know, these plants that make this sand do have gold recovery systems. And this is the small amount of gold that escapes their gold recovery systems. So here's another closer view of the 4 little micro dots and the little flake. And this is in the weighing pan that goes on the scale. But you can see the pan is only about 1 inch in diameter, and these are very small inside the pan. So here you can see the 4 little micro dots and the tiny flake in the weigh pan on the scale weighing 000. And at today's prices, a gram of gold is about $62.50 US, and a thousandth of that would be 6 cents. And so this amount of gold is less than 6 cents. Now, of the 2 samples that I took at the hydraulic pits, the first one was the best, although both of them were good. You can see there's quite a little bit of gold. The amount that I got, it was about 1/2 of a 5-gallon bucket. And so, you know, not bad. It's pay dirt. It's definitely yielded something. And on the scale, it certainly wasn't 0. 0.148 grams, you know, actually works out at the current price to be about $9.25. So, hey, that's not too bad. And then from the second hydraulic pit, this is the result I got from panning that down. And actually the biggest piece there in the middle, that's easily would have been detectable with my gold monster, which is what I was using in that area. And it probably didn't detect simply because it was down in a crack or something, because I kind of tore up a little bit of bedrock to get that dirt out. But it also had some nice gold. And here's that gold on the scale. You can see it's 68 thousandths, or just close to 7/100ths of a gram, which is a small amount of gold, but it's enough to weigh easily. And if you calculate that out at the current price of gold, assuming it's 100% pure, which of course it's not, but just making that quick assumption, you end up with about $4.25. Again, not bad for just a sample picked up off the ground. Now, when I was running those 3 samples, I had another thing that I wanted to go through and process at the same time, and it was a big sample of numerous buckets that I did of some dry wash tailings that I ran my dry washer and did as best I could. But because I knew the gold there was really, really fine, I knew I was missing some. So I decided to go back and run some of my tailings wet. And this is what I got from, I think I had 8 or 10 buckets full. It's pretty good. And you can see it weighed up real nice. You can see it weighed up at 1.365 grams. And now you can see that it's not very pure. There's a bunch of little brown rocks and things in there. But some of those have visible gold in them. And so I decided to leave them in there because the gold that they do have. So it probably, you know, minus the junk in there, it's probably a little over 1 gram of gold. And a lot of that is just a zillion of those little micro dots that I showed you from the bag of construction sand. If you have enough of them, they do add up. And that's the kind of gold that dry washers just don't do very well with.
So what can we say are the conclusions about our little experiment with buying some construction sand and then panning and sluicing it out to get whatever gold that it had? And, you know, it's not a surprise that there's a little bit of gold in a lot of those places. But the conclusion is the gravel plants that produce this sand, they have good recovery systems. Not 100%, you know, they left a little tiny bit of gold behind, But they, you know, in a number of these plants, in the western foothills of the Sierra, but in Oregon and Arizona and other places too, you know, there's significant gold in the gravels, not a huge amount, but it's worthwhile for these plants to recover it. So they have a good recovery system. And some of these bigger ones in California, they produce thousands of ounces of gold every year as a byproduct. So it's an important byproduct to the mining or the sand and gravel product that they produce. But it's not economic to buy it. You know, even in some places where these plants do produce a lot, you know, they have good recovery systems. But, you know, not always. I know a story in Nevada of a sand and gravel plant that was located here, and it wasn't in a big mining area, but there were a few little mines nearby that never were really big producers or anything, but a couple little gold prospects. And one of the employees, or a couple of the employees, went to the boss and said, hey, we'll clean out, and then there's a part of the plant that processes the sand that is where the gold will accumulate if you don't actually have a system to recover it. And they offered to clean out that whole part of the plant. And they told the boss, if you'll let us keep any gold we find. And the boss told him, there's no gold here, you know. And the guy said, look, we'll take the risk. If there's some gold, we'll get something. If there's not any, we'll have worked a day for free. So the boss said, okay. And the guys went in there and they cleaned out the plant. And on a Saturday, it took them all day. They got 6 ounces of gold. Not a huge amount, but you know, for a day, working on a day off, you split it 3 ounces a piece. That's a pretty good day of overtime working for 3 ounces of gold. So it's not economic to buy the sand though that comes in the bags like this because of the recovery systems that they have. You know, I paid around $6 for that bag of sand, 60 pounds of sand, and in all honesty, it ended up being less than 6 cents. So that's not very economic to spend $6 for less than 6 cents worth of gold. But, you know, I also showed by the samples that I took in the hydraulic pits that good paying gravels can be had at old placer mines. There's no question about it that there's a lot of old placer mines that you can go bucket up your own pay dirt, you know, and you never know what you're going to find in that kind of stuff. And so you can take samples and process them yourself and find some good gold. And, you know, there's a lot of these old placer mines around in various western states and maybe a few even in the eastern states that they would qualify. And you can find some good paying gravel just going out and taking samples for yourself. And finding your own gravel, your own gold bearing gravel, is very rewarding. It was a lot of fun for me to take those samples. Both of those places are places where I'd done some metal detecting and found some gold. And one of them I'd done some dry washing there too and had some gold from the dry washing. And I thought, hey, you know, let's take a sample here and see how it compares to, you know, the Home Depot sand. Well, you know, one sample was a little over $9 and the other sample was a little over $4, and both of those were about a half of a 5-gallon bucket full. So pretty good for, you know, just going out and taking a few samples in the old placer mines. But finding those places and knowing where to take your sample and that sort of thing is a skill and a knowledge. It's the knowledge of prospecting. And, you know, prospecting is what gives you success. The more you know, the more likely you are to be able to go out and find those places. For me, you know, I know what I'm doing. I've been doing this for years, and I went out and it's like, oh yeah, I'll take a sample here, and oh yeah, I'll take a sample over there. I knew where to look. But in order for you to have that skill, you know, it takes time to learn. You can join a prospecting club. I highly recommend that for new guys. Join a prospecting club in your area. But I wrote a book. It's called Fistful of Gold, because that's what I want you to go out and find, is Fistful of Gold. And it's an encyclopedia, and it's a great book, and it teaches you all the knowledge and skill that you need to have to go out and find your own gold. Because like I say, going out, spending a day and finding your own gold, it's a very rewarding experience. Anyway, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about my book right now.
So this is my book, Fistful of Gold. You can see it's an encyclopedia distilling down my 45 plus years of prospecting experience plus my degree into the parts that you need to know. I spent most of 10 years writing this. It was not just a simple effort that, I sat down and wrote it. You can see it's like 250,000 words. It's not something you're going to read through in a day or maybe even a week or more. But it's got a lot of information and reference material that you can come back to. You can read it once and read it again and get more out of it because there's just that much depth of material in this. I wrote this book because I want you to have the skills to go out and find fistfuls of gold for yourself. And if you have the skills and know what you're doing and get out in the field and make a real effort, you can find significant gold. It's not easy. I'm not going to tell you that because, gold, it wouldn't be, close to $2,000 an ounce, which is what it is right now. It wouldn't be so expensive if it was easy to find. It's not easy. You just can't walk out into an old gold field and start picking up nuggets. If the gold was easy to see and find, the old timers would have picked it up and taken it themselves. So you got to have skill. You got to know what you're doing. You got to be able to master what it takes to find gold, and you've got to have the persistence and put in the effort to find the material, to find the gold or diamonds or gemstones that you're looking for. Now, this book has geology, it has facts about gold, it has stuff about diamonds and platinum, but it's mostly about gold deposits, how gold deposits form, how placer and nuggets form, all the questions you've probably wanted to ask. The book is available on Amazon, and I'll put a link to it in the description below, but you can look up on Amazon, Fistful of Gold, and by Chris Ralph, and find this book. Now, the book, if you look at it, it has a very high rating. It has like a 4.7 or 4.8 out of 5, which is really high. I mean, it's hard to please everybody, but I'm close to a 5 out of 5, not far from it, right? So it's been out. I've sold more than 15,000 copies of this book, and I've had tremendous response, tremendous positive response by the people who buy it. And I think if you buy it, you'll be just as happy with it. Now, in addition to my book, I also have a website that I do, and I'll tell you a little bit more about my website and show you some images from the website right now. Now, my website is NevadaOutbackGems.com, and I'll put a link to the prospecting page, this prospecting encyclopedia page, down in the description below, but you can find it at Nevada Outback Gems. I sell some jewelry, turquoise, other gemstones there. I don't always keep the inventory perfectly up to date, so if you're interested in anything you see, do contact me first before trying to send me money or anything, because I want you to be able to get what you order. But the website has lots of different stories, old adventures, even some stories, true stories from the old-time miners of the 1800s. So I think it's something you'll find interesting. The other thing I want to go back to is that all my comments, I want you guys to ask questions on the comments for my videos. I answer 100% of the comments that are made on my videos. Now, sometimes if somebody just says, hey, great video, I really enjoyed it, the comment may just be, well, I'm really glad you liked it. Or if it's a simple question. And sometimes I get people who ask me questions, it would take a book to answer that question. And I recommend that they just buy the book. But I answer all my questions. I try to help people as much as I can. I'm here to help you. So if you're interested in gaining the skills, if you're interested in knowing what you need to know to be successful, follow along with me. Subscribe to my channel, hit the bell so that they'll let you know when I come out with new videos, and I try to do that pretty much every Saturday morning. And
you'll enjoy with me. You'll come along with me. We'll have an adventure together, and we will find some nice gold and see what it's really like getting out in the woods, or the deserts, or the mountains, wherever we land, wherever the gold is, wherever the diamonds are, wherever the platinum is. Come along, we'll have some fun. And I'll see you real soon on the next video.